Hey everyone, Adam here, So Wizard Podcast. I have another interview for you today. I got to sit down with Jack Peter Mundy, who's a creator and director, to talk about his latest movie, Prototype. I'm going to have a review of Prototype later in the week, but just to give you a very brief synopsis, Prototype follows the first kind of fully autonomous AI butler kind of assistant things. They're robots a little bit on the crude side compared to some other sci-fi we've seen, but it's because they are, as the title suggests, the prototype, and what could go along with those and kind of those big fears that we all have of AI. But the cool hook of this movie is that it doesn't focus solely on that and like the Asimov laws and all those typical things. It's actually based on a family drama, which brought a lot more depth to it. As I said, interview later in the week, just wanted to give you a brief synopsis. Anyway, it was really cool to be able to sit down with Jack to talk about his career, how he kind of found his way in, the big pivot he did. I don't want to say late in his life, but later in his life. You know, he wasn't a teenager who made this decision. Cat. So it was cool to see. I always like seeing how people find the way in to chase their passion and to do the thing they want to do and how hard they're willing to make it work. So I thought it was a really fascinating interview. I hope you enjoy. Hey everyone, Adam here, So Wizard Podcast. I'm sitting down with Jack Peter Mundy to talk about his newest movie, Prototype. How you doing, Jack?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Doing good. Thanks for coming on. This should be fun.
No problem at all.
And thanks for making the time difference work.
It's fine for me. I don't know what time is it there, sort of 9-ish, something like that, early
11.
11. Oh, fine. Oh,
I'm on the East Coast, so we're a little later.
Fine. It's 4 o'clock here. It's I was in the middle of editing, so all you've done is give me a good excuse to stop editing.
There you go.
Bit, so I'm fine. Any excuse is good.
Excellent. Nice break.
Absolutely.
Before we get on to Prototype, my one boilerplate thing that I like to do is to ask creative people to go all the way back to the beginning of their creative journey. So kind of what was your spark, and then how did you get your start?
Okay. Wow. So I grew up in the 80s. Although I say I grew up in the 80s, I think there's a lot of nostalgia at the moment for the 80s and 80s films, but I really only got aware of films very late in the 80s and into the 90s. And it was only really like you'd go to the cinema and that would be that would be special and that'd be exciting. But it was VHS and watching films at home and watching films on repeat over and over again. Films you'd recorded off the TV that you then would watch. And the amount of films I've seen in later, like they came out on Blu-ray or I've watched on streaming services and realized there was a whole chunk at the beginning of the film that I've never seen because I only ever watched the bit when I recorded on the TV and continued watching. So there's I think Raiders of the Lost Ark or Temple of Doom, I think it was actually. Temple of Doom was one of my favorite films, but I didn't realize there was a whole bit at the front that makes the film much, much more logical. It makes much more sense. But I'd missed it. I never saw it. So that kind of sparked my interest in films. And I think when it got to that stage, at school, people are discussing what they're going to do. And, people want to be like lawyers or bankers or, doctors or whatever. I kind of thought, well, what's the only thing I like? What's the thing I love? Films. Oh yeah, I'll make films. And then it came to going to university or college or whatever, and I thought I'll go to film school. That seems like a logical thing to do. I'm still not quite sure what I want to do, so I went to film school. Loved that. And then when you leave film school, it's like, right, off you go and make films. Go and be an unpaid runner on a film set for the next 3 years. You might not get any money. You'll probably be broke forever. And after being a student, I kind of thought, well, do I really want to do that? Is this can I actually make a career out of doing this? So I didn't. I went into PR and decided to have a career in PR for a good 10 years. And I thought, shall I do that forever? And it literally got to the 10-year itch, and I was like, I'm now going to be doing PR for the rest of my life. So I thought, no, I need to make a change. And about 5-6 years ago, I decided I was going to do go back to what I'd actually trained to do and start making films again. So that's what I did.
That's a cool and logical approach that I'm sure a lot of people fall into, but I think a lot of people
logical. I mean, there is passion behind it, but it has to be a certain level of logic. It was kind of like I'm settled in my life enough at the moment to not worry too much about where the next paycheck's coming from. I mean, obviously that's always a concern, and obviously then we had a pandemic in the middle of all that as well. But I kind of thought you get to a point in your life and you kind of, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And right. And this was something I really wanted to do, and something that I knew I was, I knew I could do, but it was, how does anybody start in the film industry, especially outside of America? I mean, we have a lot of talent, we have a lot of creative people, and we have some studios, but it's not as geared up to the film industry as it is in America. So I think, yeah, it's just a case of we'll suck it and see what happens. And so far, it's going okay.
Good. Yeah, something I wanted to ask about is depending on where you grew up, if there's not a lot of access to creative fields like that, like I know me as a kid, I loved movies, and it never occurred to me that a normal person could just be like, well, I'm gonna write a movie, I'm gonna direct, I'm gonna act. Like, it didn't even occur to me. Maybe it was
Yeah.
just lack of creativity, but
No, but I think it's always been arm's length. I mean, I don't know people in the film industry. I don't, my parents don't have a background in that. Although Pinewood Studios is relatively near to me, it's about 20 minutes, 30 minutes away. So that's where people have, where they made, Star Wars films and, big budget, James Bond, obviously, especially is made there. That was some place that other people went to. Like, I couldn't, I hear stories of other directors and other, actors going, oh, there was times I snuck onto the Pinewood Studios lot, but that was never me. I was never that person. And it was only when you actually just sort of, well, just literally start doing it, trying, making contacts, applying for roles on different things, working your way up, and just seeing what happens. And I'm a big believer in, karma and, putting stuff out there and seeing what comes back and trying to just keep going. It's always important. I think actors especially get this a lot, is the constant need to just keep going, because you'll get so many rejections, so many pushbacks, so many like, no, you're not going to be able to make this, that it just takes that next step. There's always another opportunity, always another thing coming up. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty happy that, every film you make, although there are going to be things you'd wish you'd done differently, or you'd wish you'd had access to a bigger budget or more this, that, and the other. It's always an achievement that you've managed to make anything, and that it's out there and people are seeing it. That's an achievement. So you've got to celebrate your successes, but at the same time, learn from your mistakes and continue to grow. So that's what I'm trying to do. So Prototype was the first film I directed. I've done about 10 features as director of photography. And this was the first opportunity to come up that was like, okay, off you go and direct the film. And I think it was a case of, well, you can direct it and you can be the DOP. So yeah, there you go. We've killed two birds with one stone. That's those two roles filled. We don't need to find another whole person now. But I was kind of happy that was the case. I was like, that's fine. I can do that. But it was a baptism of fire to do both of those roles, to not have that person to bounce off. And I think subsequent films, I've loved working with the DOP, where you can concentrate on the actors, or you can sort of give your vision to them, and then they would bounce back ideas. It's very much more of a collaborative thing, but it's lonely when you're doing both of those roles and there's no one else to support you, I suppose.
Right, the whole vision's right on you.
Yeah, it's literally you. So yeah, exactly, and there's a lot of pressure because everybody looks at the film and goes, well, there's only one person that was made that film, and that's him. They don't see the pressures behind the scenes of the limitations you had. I mean, we shot it during COVID, so we had crew dropping out like every day, and then new people coming on. And as a production, it's like very much like a family. So you would sort of bond on those first couple of days, and it's always a little bit awkward as you sort of find your feet. But we had to do that time and time and time again.
Okay.
With new people coming in. Yeah, so it was really, really hard. But I'm still really proud of what we did with the film, and I think the actors did an amazing job. They really managed to battle through and didn't let it phase them too much. And we made the best of the situation we had. And I think that's always the challenge in filmmaking, is to do the best you can, and stand by what you do, strive for the best, and don't stop being creative, because it can very easily slip into being about the money, or about, sort of just getting it done and finished. And, I left a job that I did for 10 years that was very much like process based, get it done, finished, next one, clients, and it's all very business orientated. Whereas I'm going to make sure that everything I do now is very creative based. It's all about making creative decisions and letting the creativity rule rather than business decisions, which is probably why I'm very poor. I've got no money, but I am creative.
Going from that kind of like punch the clock atmosphere where it is just business, get it through the door, let's bill somebody else, to doing something creative, I imagine it's not that hard of a switch in your brain to be like, no, I'm going to care now. This means a little bit more than let's just get on to the next thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always been a creative person. I think you kind of that's either, I think you're, I think you sort of fall into one of two camps really, more of a production role or a creative role, a producer, not necessarily a producer, but something to do with production or something in terms of you making something, and it's very much tables and spreadsheets and budgets and times. I'm no good with time. I'm no good with. I need when I get into a set, I'm like, okay, just tell me what to do in terms of where I need to be, who I need to talk to, where I need to, what decision needs to be made first, what scenes we're shooting first. I need someone to do that part because my brain can't cope with that. And then as soon as I'm there, I'm like, right, now I know what I'm doing within this scene with these actors. Right, I can think about the lights. I can think about how we're going to shoot this, what shots we're going to do, and then we can focus on the stuff I enjoy rather than, literally just dealing with I need to know where I'm going to be, what I'm going to do, and then
Has that come back to bite you? Maybe not on Prototype necessarily, but any of your projects where it's kind of like, hey, Jack, we got to move things on here. We got scenes
constantly.
to do. Okay.
Yeah, constantly. I mean, low budget films are synonymous with time constraints. There's always a time constraint. Obviously, that you initially you've got budgeted a lot less days than you would on a bigger production, because time is money at the end of the day. You're paying people day rates, and obviously the longer a production goes. So you do build that into the film. You do build that into a film by making sure that you don't shoot in 10 different locations, you only shoot it in 5, that you shoot with a smaller cast rather than larger cast because more people, more money, more time. But there is always, there's always a constraint. And the thing I always think about is, which is probably, I'm not really comparing myself to this person, but I always remember hearing Richard Donner talking about making Superman the movie, and how the Soul Kinds, the producers on that film, would constantly tell him he was over budget and behind schedule and taking too long. And he was literally like, but I'm going to do this right. And it made an amazing film that's lasted a lifetime. So I think it doesn't matter what level of your career you're at or what level of budget you're at, you'll always have a producer, you'll always have someone saying you're doing it too long, you're doing it wrong, or, and you've just got to be bloody minded about doing things. At the same time, being aware that you're going to run out of resources at some point, and you just kind of have to make decisions. So it's funny because I've obviously, since the first interviews I've done about Prototype, we've started getting feedback, and you never really should look at IMDb and read the comments about what people say about your films.
No way. Avoid the internet.
But I do, because I think even the most ardent person that's going to go and sort of really slate your film or pick holes in it is still an audience member, is still someone that's watched the film. I have to say, with a caveat to that, it does bug me when they go, I watched 5 minutes of this film and that was all. And I'm like, really, you're gonna write a review of this film based on the first 5 minutes?
Yeah,
that seems harsh. But at the same time, I do watch them, do read the reviews and stuff, and I kind of take on board, because at the end of the day, every film is a learning curve. Every film is an experience of sort of like, well, because it's amazing. Sometimes the most trivial thing in your mind when you're making the film is suddenly the most important thing for everybody else. People are constantly saying about, you can see the actors' eyes behind the masks, the prosthetics. And it was kind of a deliberate thing we did. We were originally going to, in post-production, blend all their eyes in. But our concern was that the performances we were getting from the actors were so strong. And people have commented about how good they are, because it's really hard to act in a mask.
Right.
Was so strong, but they had very little. You could convey things with your whole body, your head movements, but it was all in the eyes. And we were very worried about losing that by blending out their eyes. And so I'd stand by that decision. I think it makes the film better, but people are just like, you can see it's a mask, and that's all they can deal with. And I think it's a shame. I think we've come to a level with a film expectation that it's not about the storytelling, it's not about the experience, it's about, that special effect doesn't look quite right, and that doesn't, I think we've built it up too much. I mean, I was watching Batman, the first Batman film, the other day. Lots of
Michael
beautiful,
Keaton?
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of beautiful matte paintings, but you can see the join. You can see that halfway up it's a set, and then halfway up that is just a still painting and no movement. But you don't care. As a kid, you're watching it and you're just thinking, oh my God, this is Gotham City.
Yeah.
Whereas nowadays, audiences would be looking at, oh, that's not right. That's not moving. That shot's not there. And it's just a shame. I think people just need to suspend a certain level of disbelief and enjoy a film, I think.
I think the problem with looking at, if you look at reviews online, and obviously it's not everyone everywhere, but it seems like people are just looking to take something down. Like there's no construct. It's not like, hey, this worked, this didn't so much. It's just like you said, I watched 5 minutes and now I'm going to crap all over it. It's like, but you didn't even see it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I say I've always never been. I try not to take things personally. I don't think that's the case. And I can watch me and my friends sit down at the weekends and we'll watch films, classic films, new films, and we'll be there going, oh, you can see the joint in that, you can do that. But we try and do it from a creative perspective. Like, isn't that shot amazing? How have they managed to do that? And we try and break things down. We had the last film before this that was released, or one of the. This is the sixth film I've directed that's been released. Although it was the first film I shot, but because of delays in production and COVID and things like that, this is now coming out now. I've shot a film called Jack and Jill last year that came out at the end of last year. And it was released on YouTube, which was the first time it's still on DVD as well, but it was released on YouTube. And I think that's becoming a bit of a model for low budget films, is that they do go online. And my concern at first was, oh my God, people comment on YouTube more than anything. They'll literally watch it. They'll be watching it and be typing, I do not like this bit, I do not. But the feedback was so positive. Like, generally, I mean, there was always some people picking holes in it, but the feedback was overwhelmingly negative. And to see the likes going up to like 5,000, 10,000, likes, it does give you instant validation as well. So I kind of take on board all feedback. I think, at the end of the day, if someone said, I can't get over the fact that I can't watch this film because of a small detail like that, then it'll be in my mind for the next time we make a film and think, well, actually, can we do something to improve that? Or maybe I need to tell a better story or do things in a different way that then means that people don't necessarily focus on that particular element. But I think it's a shame because, as I say, I think there is a lot to be positive about, and it's getting some really good reviews, and I think the actors did an amazing job, especially Luke and Zoe, who played 1 and 2. They did an amazing job working in not very nice prosthetic masks for 12 hours a day is not fun. And then having to move around and act in it and be congenial to everybody as well. No, not for me. So I completely take my hats off to them. And so I think they hopefully people really enjoy their performances, because the film is basically hangs on their performances. And I think they did an amazing job.
They do shoulder a lot of it. Yeah. Speaking of the android design, was there ever a conversation of maybe just casting, well, obviously you casted an actor, but not having the prosthetics and just have them kind of like, what's that?
Just cast some robots.
You're right. Yeah. Just build some robots, from the ground up. It'll be easier.
That would have been a lot easier to do. No, there wasn't.
Sorry.
There wasn't. I mean, I was brought on board relatively late in the process. The decision had already been made, but I supported the decision, and I saw the prosthetics and I thought, no, I totally know what this is gonna be like, because you're right. We have a series in the UK called Humans. I don't know if you've seen it.
That's kind of what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we very much could have done that. It would have been a lot easier. But I think there's a personal amount of wanting me to make something a bit more akin to something like RoboCop, or something that's got a particular AI or obviously robotic element in it. So there is that sort of personal thing. But I think it helped with a number of different characteristics. We didn't have to worry about whether we were casting male or females. They could be interchangeable. And I really like the aesthetic of. I think it's just personal, isn't it? I think we could have gone down the completely AI, but I think we also, because of budget limitations, we wanted to make sure it was set in the now rather than in the distant future, where possibly that level of technology is there. But no, I like the prosthetics. I mean, I didn't have to wear them, so and they were a pain. They have lights on them at the back and things lit up, and they were constantly breaking, and you can change them and things like that. But yeah, they were constantly breaking and not working and things like that. So it would have been a lot easier. I could have made my life a lot easier, but I don't think it would have been the same film, and I don't think it would have been. I think it's really nice, especially the relationship between the youngest in the family and the robot. I think it is quite contrasting that they're obviously very different. You've got a human child and you've got this sort of robotic adult shaped person, and their bond, I think, is made more interesting by the fact that he is actually sort of in a robotic costume. So I think it adds to it, but I guess it's personal preference.
Yeah, I didn't mean it as a knock or anything. I was just curious, the thought, because like you mentioned, Humans is just one end of the spectrum. Then I was also thinking of Ex Machina, where the character left his robot, like, yes, she has a beautiful face, but you can tell it's a robot and she's still going to fool you. And then I was also thinking, well, the movie's called Prototype. They don't have advanced, skin and touch features. And
exactly.
yeah,
I mean, Ex Machina is a perfect example. I mean, it's a perfect example of what we would have loved to have been able to do with more money and more resources, because it's such an interesting. I mean, the way they did some of the techniques was sort of really groundbreaking in terms of how they shot that, and having being at that level in your career where you can focus on some of the nuances and aesthetics choices. You can have those choices, where a lot of the time with low budget filmmaking, you're literally given your choices. These are the boundaries. These are the things that we can and cannot do. Now go and make as best film as you can. I think when your budgets increase, yes, the risk increases because you can make more wrong decisions on the way to a right decision, but you at least have the opportunity to make those decisions. So, Ex Machina is an amazing film.
Yeah, it was just
watch Prototype first, then go and watch Ex
Machina. Right, there you go. I just thought it was interesting to have it be so obviously a robot, but like you said, the youngest kid was really like, this is a friend. I don't care what she, they look like.
Yeah.
It's one. That's them. That's all it is.
So I think you're right with the Prototype being a prototype. I think coming straight out with something that was very clearly, sort of fully formed and ready for market would be sort of less genuine anyway. So I think on that level alone, it does work for the story that it's a little bit more obvious. And that's why they're in sort of, non-generic clothing. It's just very much like they're straight out of the lab, ready to be tested.
Yeah, it made more sense where it kind of felt like the main character there. I'm so terrible at names. Sorry.
Which one? The family one. I have all their names on my screen because it got very confusing because the actor in playing Andy is called Marshall, and then they're the Marshall family. So in my mind, this was the most confusing thing. As a director, I find it absolutely terrible to go in on the first day of a shoot, and you have to get people's names right because it's so important. As the director, people need to feel validated and important, and I'm just terrible with names though. So I'm constantly going like, oh my God, I need badges on people to tell me who their names are.
Right.
But yeah, so Marshall played Andy, or the dynamics of the family were Shelley and Roger.
Roger was the dad, the husband.
Roger, yeah, he was the
right.
He was the
I kind of had like the feeling that like Roger's high up in the company, so he just kind of like took this thing home. Like he really wasn't even maybe supposed to.
I think he's very much the business side of it. I don't think he got his hands dirty at all. I think he's like his genius is working backstage, and he's gone, yeah, I'm gonna take one of these home. I need someone to, I need one to mop my floor and control my wife.
Right, total commodity. There's no like, look at what we built. Look at the AI. We birthed artificial intelligence. There was none of that.
No, his background is very much like I will just use the resources at my disposal. I haven't actually done any of the legwork, and maybe that's the punishment for not doing the legwork. He hasn't done the work that, say, maybe Graham has done. Graham seems very much more the inventor, and yet Graham gets none of the glory. It's Roger that's there, taking home all of the fruits of his labor, and the punishment is he doesn't really understand what technologies he's got, and maybe that's the punishment is that don't take things home from work, don't steal those staplers from work,
right?
They could come and attack you.
I thought all those little things in the script were really subtle. The script was really clever, and that
Sam script, he did a great job.
A question. Yeah. Is that what drew you to the project, like when you first read it?
Absolutely. I think Sam did an amazing job with the script. I think he's a really, really talented guy. And reading it, I kind of completely knew exactly what he was trying to convey, the dynamics he wanted to convey. I mean, at the heart of this film, although some people have said it's a sci-fi film, it's not really a sci-fi film. Especially, it's a family drama set in the future with sci-fi elements. So similar, it's also got humor elements in it, and it's got sort of slasher horror elements in it, but it's really not a gore fest, which some people may say it's like a jack of all trades, which I use that expression a lot because I am Jack. Jack of all trades in that it tries to do a lot of things, and maybe therefore could be argued that it doesn't do any of those things successfully. But actually, I like going to I just make films that I enjoy. So I could be watching a horror film and then someone makes a joke and it's funny, I will laugh. I don't go, right, that's a comedy and that's a horror and they can't meet. And there's a sci-fi element in that. All of these things have to be separated. I think it should be an experience of all of these elements coming together. I don't mind that. I think sometimes humor can relieve the tension. It's funny because a lot of the dialogue that Sam wrote for the robots, especially 2, where she has this sort of malfunctioning or sort of quirky humor chip added in. And so she's making these weird jokes that don't really land, and they're not really supposed to. So she's going, "Shall I cut the greens?" And then she's saying to Michael, "Oh, you're wearing green." Some people are going, "Oh my god, it's so creepy." You can take creepy from that, but I think it's funny that she's there going,
right, yeah.
And it's also about playing with the audience about when is, they know that these robots are malfunctioning. When at which point is this robot suddenly gonna cut the greens or stab someone? Like at any moment that could change, and it does. So I think keeping the audience on the toes it was part of the charm of this film, I think, and Sam did a great job writing it.
Yeah, I did like that about the two character where pretty much all of her jokes, maybe they weren't even supposed to be jokes and she was just playing them off.
Yeah.
It
Well,
was
they don't
everything
realize, they don't
people
know.
fear about AI.
Absolutely, yeah. Instead of I was told my humor would be engaging or enlightening, and it's just so fun. It's like exactly like a robot's being programmed to do humor. That's exactly what they would be like. They would have a
Yeah.
series of calculations or words to say. They wouldn't really know what response they were supposed to get or how they were supposed to deliver it. And I think that there's elements in that I think were really really nice to have. Similarly, I liked the domestic violence element in there was another element that we could have played up or played down. I mean, in some ways, it's a little bit it's a little bit of a stereotype that you've got the baddie, and we need to underline the fact that he's a baddie by making him do bad things to other people as well. And it's kind of like punctuating and underlining the same point. But I really like the element because it kind of shows his journey and how he's sort of trying to control technology, but also trying to control his family. And his behaviors at home wouldn't be different from his behaviors in the office. His controlling behaviors are a personal trait of his. And so I think suddenly, if he was this loving, caring husband at home, and then was a complete git in the office, or was making some of those questionable decisions about how to use this AI and things like that, I think that would be more jarring. So I quite like the family dynamics. And James, Jamie, and Danielle did an amazing job being the main couple. But also equally, I think Marshall and Tom did a great job being the kids. Tom especially is really witty, and his sarcastic, moaning teenager was nailed it every single time. I absolutely love his lines. And
Complete
exactly
contrast to the little girl.
Yeah, it's so exactly like I imagine when this level of technology comes in, there'll be a certain level of apathy that comes in really, really quickly from a generation that's never known any differently. So I think, at the moment we've got these amazing phones in our hands, and anybody of a certain age, mine, looks at it and goes, "Oh my God, this is the most amazing thing in the world. We've got millions of songs. We've got everything in our hand right now." Whereas the next generation, I would say, like how old do I sound now? But people that have never not known that. I mean, my niece is 5. She's had she has access to a phone occasionally, and so she'll never know what it was like to play Snake on her phone on a Nokia and feel that was amazing. She'll just have that apathy for technology. And I think Tom has that apathy with Michael. That there's this droid in this house and it's fine. Now go and clean the room. It's like
You didn't clean it quick enough.
yeah, exactly. So that apathy will come in, and it will happen every single time. A huge development will happen, and the next generation will go, "Oh, that's great. Oh, okay, now I'm bored of that. Next, TikTok, next." Facebook,
especially next. with who the kid's dad is like the kid's dad just sees it as it might as well be a vacuum cleaner. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's
an appliance. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, the family dynamic was really. I try not to watch trailers or read synopsis before I watch a movie because I don't want to make up my mind and then watch it.
We don't usually have much say over the trailers. Like sometimes the trailers are made by the distribution companies. So
that too.
Sometimes I'll see a trailer and of a film I've done, and I go, "Yes, that's perfect. That's a great trailer." And sometimes I'll see a trailer and go, "Oh, that's not how I would have interpreted it." I mean, I quite like this trailer, but sorry, I interrupted you slightly. But trailers are interesting because they're not usually made by the filmmaker. They're usually made by a marketing person. You can tell.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, they're just like, let's get as many of the plot points in, or as many of the sort of the best selling points of the film, which is exactly what you should do, obviously. But sometimes, there can be spoilers in there and things like that, which is a bit of a shame. Sorry,
no, that's a really good point, especially from coming from a director, because a lot of more casual movie fans might not know that, and they go to the movie theater, they watch a movie, like a big studio movie, and you're like, well, in 4 minutes, I just saw the entire thing. You didn't hold anything back. But the guy who made the movie is like, why would you do that? No one's going to watch my movie.
The amount of times that I watch or read a review or hear someone talking about like, oh, why did the director do this? Why did the director do that? And sometimes 100% I would hold up my hands and go, that was my decision or that was my call. But there's a lot of times where I had no control over that element of it. I think special effects is one of the ones that people often pick up and go, oh, the special effects in this were like, you know, the reference is always Jurassic Park. Oh my God, this is like so much worse than Jurassic Park and things like that. Yeah, Jurassic Park had millions of pounds of budget, but also we very rarely have complete control over how long we get in post-production to finish these special effects and stuff. Or there'll be a limit on the number that we can do. So you then have to pick your choices. Which ones are we going to do? So yeah, it's always interesting to know. I think people think the directors have a lot more power than they actually do.
Yeah.
But yeah, in reality, I think even the biggest director, I mean, maybe Steven Spielberg probably has quite a bit of say. But apart from that, I think every director will have pressures on him from some point. Some party will be like, no, you can't have. You'll have less money. You can do less of that. So it's always interesting. It's always worth pointing out that we very rarely have a say on a lot of these things. So.
Absolutely, yeah. Like you said, there's probably 5 working directors who have been working long enough and successfully enough to get to that point where the studio might give them a note or two, but it's more of like they're trying to validate their job.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. That's very true. We all aspire to be that. At the same time, though, I mean, I quite like the balances and checks process of filmmaking. I do think it is an interesting, and it's kind of one you have to embrace to a certain extent, because you say there'll always be limitations of what you can and cannot do, but also it's very much a shared medium. At the end of the day, it has an audience that has to engage with it, and 10 different people will have 10 different opinions on things. And obviously, directors that excel please 9 of those 10 people, and directors that don't excel please 1 of the people, usually themselves. And
Right.
that's it. So the checks and balances processes are really useful, especially as a growing director that's sort of in like my first 6 or so films. It's always really useful. That's why I take on board people's feedback and thoughts about the films, because at the end of the day, every point is validated, as long as if it comes from a creative point. Some of them are just vindictive, but
Right, yeah. And as the director, you probably have enough say, even in a smaller production, to kind of, I see your point, but maybe go back a little bit.
I've got better at saying that now. Yeah, I think your first film, your first couple of films, you're very much this is how this is being done, and you're kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, yeah,
that makes sense.
I have no frame of reference, or I haven't got the confidence yet to be able to say, no, that's definitely not how we're going to do that, or even know what the alternative is. Whereas I definitely think the last 2 or 3 films I've done, I've been very much more able to say, no, let's do it like this, or I draw the line at doing that. Let's find a compromise. And that's why I'm co-producing the latest film I've done, which gives you that much more level of input, which I think is, once you have that level of input, it's very hard to go back and sort of relinquish all your power. But at the same time, it's still collaborative. You're still working with a lot of different people. Everybody's got their own specialisms, knowing what your limitations are, which I have many, obviously. But, knowing that actually I can't do this bit well, that needs to go off. Sound especially is one of those things that makes a film. And coming from a cinematography and visual background, I have no concept of how sound is. I mean, I know there's a boom and I know there's a sound man, but it's a skill. It's a real skill and a real talent. And good sound people will be meticulous and so diligent about their sound, and be a complete pain to most cinematographers on set when they're like their booms in shot and things like that. But it does make a film, and it's so important. But it is like the dark arts to me. Sound is like a magic thing that sound people do and then produce sound. But it's not something I'd ever say is something I could do.
Right.
So, getting the right people together. I think similarly, like on this film, we worked with Andy Fosbury doing the score. Andy's great. I've worked with him on 3 of my films now. And I think you sort of build a relationship. There's a couple of composers I work with, and he's really sort of, we develop with each film. So this was the first one we did together, I think. The first one I directed at least initially. Maybe we did some films together with when I was doing the cinematography. But every film you kind of build that relationship together, work out. There are some bits in this that he was there. I had to really like push him into like, I want a score that sounds like this. There's a particular piece of music at the end. He goes, sounds just like Coldplay. I don't want to make this. And I was like, no, I need a happy element in here. And I really twisted his arm. But as films go on, I think we sort of get to know a shortcut with each other and go, actually, I do realize we could do something different there. And he sort of trusts me to make some decisions so it's all a collaborative process at the end of the day.
As a director, does a lot of that collaboration or getting the team to run as one well-oiled machine, is that more on you as a director, or does that fall more to like maybe a producer?
I think it's a combination of both, and they have to work together. I think the producer gets the people together in the first place. So if they're not the right people in the first place, you're going to have problems. And I think the director is 90% in sort of there to make sure that they stay in as part of the team. I think, if people, the producer brings them together, the director has to keep them together. There'll always be some pressures from the production in general that sort of, mean that people fall by the wayside or, things don't work. But it's the director's job to be a bit of a mediator to a certain extent, I think. I know some directors don't work like that. They're very much like it's hard and fast my way, and they'll have a producer that literally sort of, okay, well, we'll just move these things around. And maybe that's the way to be. But I've always been, the sort of the mediator, wanting everybody to be happy on set, because I think people are, well, actually, you should probably ask people on set whether they are happy when I'm directing them. The film that I'm editing at the moment is the first time I've kind of really listened to all the rushes of films that I've been doing. Like normally they're cut up and I look at rough edits and things like that. But this is the first time I'm listening to myself going, move that over there, do this, move that, like hearing myself in the background between takes and stuff. And it's really depressing to hear myself moaning at everybody. But at the same time, that you're coming from a point of you were thinking about 20 different things at the same time when you're making these decisions. And you're trying to get everybody on board and on the same place and the same focus. It is tricky, but it's something I'm constantly learning and improving. I don't believe in this mentality that, directors should be able to throw tantrums or be angry at people. I think they should be like the head of a household. They need to be above that type of sort of confrontation. That doesn't mean you can't like go back to your trailer and be like,
right.
But you have to kind of internalize it a little bit. But yeah, because I think it is your role to make sure that you've got a happy unit at the end of the day. I think that's your responsibility.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I'm a complete outsider, but it just sounds like why create a contentious work environment if you don't have to?
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't mean that a lot of directors, I I think it's like in any business, there'll be any business that there'll be managers and that seem to want to just, set things on fire and watch them burn. Because they'll just, you're literally like, why are you creating such an environment that's so awful to work in? I've always believed that it's really important to foster good relationships with people wherever possible. And if I'm working with someone that I really respect and admire, I want to work with them on the next film and the next film and the next film. I want to build that relationship. So why would you ever want to destroy those relationships? I think productions that are constantly finding new people to fill those roles, every single film they have to find a new person to fill this role or this role, means they're not doing enough to build those relationships with that person going forward. So I think that's really important. And hopefully I have a string of supportive people behind me that I've fostered relationships with, because it can be tricky. There's always something that pulls in the direction, especially creative people will always have a difference of opinion, will always want to do things in a different way. So it is a balancing act.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It sounds like you have a good idea of the director you are a director now, but director you want to be going forward.
Oh yeah. We're always growing. I think that's the important thing, is you'll never, what did I watch the other day? I was watching, it was an actor. I think it might have been, I want to say Al Pacino, or it could have been Robert De Niro. But he was basically going, you've done these amazing, or someone was interviewing and they said, you've done these amazing films. You must have like ticked off everything on your bucket list now. Why do you keep making films? Basically, he was like, that's the thing. If I literally got to the point where I couldn't grow anymore as a person, or there was no challenges, then, what would be the point in going to work again? I'd literally just becoming, going through the motions. And I think there are some actors that are famed for just going through the motions, and it's sad. So I think you should constantly be growing and constantly learning from your mistakes, making mistakes, realizing, and hopefully they won't be too costly, because, that's always the risk, is that you'll have costly mistakes. But yeah, 100%. I'm never, I think even if I get to 70 and still directing, then hopefully in 30 years time I'll still be growing and still be learning things, and the next generation of filmmakers behind me will be teaching me new things, and I'll be open to those discussions and that creative process. So I think that's really important.
Oh, for sure. It's got to be a big part of the job is not getting set in your ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's I'm although I've done 6 films now, it still surprises me when you make something or shoot something in a particular way, or someone suggested something on set, oh, why don't we do this? And you're like, of course that's how we should do that. Why did I ever think differently? But I remember those every single time, because I'm like, I was going to shoot it like this, and then someone just suggested we shoot it like this, and it's instantly much, much better. So if that happens 20, 30, 40 times on a production, and then every production that happens, then how much better as a person and as a director are you going to be in 4, 5, 6 films time? So yeah, I think you always strive to have things like more money, more time, your films to get bigger distributions, to be seen by more people. At the end of the day, it's all about, you're constantly striving for attention as a director. I think to a certain extent, you want to tell your stories and you want people to hear your stories. But at the same time, I think I'm quite happy that every film is just incremental. I think it's good to sort of learn on the job, as it were. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and that's got to be a tough thing about your job, where you can take all the classes, read all the books, watch all the videos you want, but you just kind of have to do it.
Yeah, that was kind of the point. I say when I left film school, it was a case of do it or go and make some money.
Right.
And at that time, when you're 20, I was like, I want money. Obviously, why would I not want to do money? And working in PR, I did a lot of jobs in those sort of 10-year period where it was on the periphery of filmmaking. It was, you'd work in media companies that would hire in film companies to do promotional films for things. You'd work in advertising or marketing. So there'd be elements of filmmaking and some levels of creativity. A previous job I also had was I was a filming manager in London. So basically a location manager. So again, you'd be dealing with these creative people, these big productions, but you'd be a little part on the side. You wouldn't be doing anything creative yourself. And you could convince yourself that you were part of this film industry because you were helping, you had a small part in the making of Men in Black or, Guardians of the Galaxy or some other film that was coming past. But you knew you weren't really involved at all, because as a creative, you want to actually put your stamp on things. So
yeah,
it is really tricky. So I'm pleased that I'm doing little steps, and hopefully over a longer period that will sustain me. Who knows?
Yeah, no, that's great. It really sounds like you know where you want to be, and you're doing it, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Because how many people took that PR job at 20, planning to go back to movies at 25 or 30, and then they're 55 and they're at that PR job.
100%. It was shocking. I went there. The job that I was there for the longest, I went there for a 3-month placement, and was there for 10 years.
Wow.
And that literally got to the point it was coming up to 10 years, and it was the 10-year itch, and I was there going, I could carry on doing this. You get a regular salary every month. You can buy a house and you've got money coming in, but you literally could do that for the next 30 years. And it was a real wake up call. I was like, is this really what you want to do I'd rather, and it's a struggle making films. It's a struggle to sort of, have that regular income, because it's usually peaks and troughs of, famine or feast. Suddenly you'll be like, in the middle of a production, in the middle of post-production on something, another film's coming out and you've got a lot of work on, and then suddenly everything will stop and you'll be like, oh, have I become a failure suddenly? Everything's dropped off and everything's quiet, and then suddenly things build up again. Oh, okay, and then you get caught up in the buzz and it's exciting again. So that's why I say you just got to keep on going, keep on taking that step forward.
And
hopefully if you're going in the right direction, you'll get to some level of where you want to be.
Yeah, I was just saying that was a really cool, inspirational thing to maybe go out on. So if you wanted to, where can people see Prototype? Where can people see your other movies? Any socials you want to promote?
Sure. So Prototype is out in America at the moment on Amazon Prime and on iTunes, so people can check it out there. Hopefully there'll be people watching that give it some nice IMDb ratings, because it's so important when we're first getting those ratings in that that people that do like the film. So a lot of people will go on social media and they'll go on IMDb to say they don't like something, but what people don't do is to like something.
Mm-hmm.
I think as creatives we really value that. My socials, Instagram is probably my favorite. People can follow me at Jack Peter Mundy, so my full name. So although it's so funny, I was talking to someone the other day, and they said, "Why do you have the Peter? Doesn't that sound a bit pretentious?" It's because someone on IMDb had Jack Mundy, and he made a film in 1912. The first Jack Mundy was from 1912 on some film. I didn't even know they made films in 1912. So I was the second Jack Mundy. I was like, no, I'll be Jack Peter Mundy. So Jack Peter Mundy on IMDb and on Instagram. People can check me out there. And that's usually the best way if people want to message me, follow me, they can do that on there. Also, yeah, previous films, some of them, I think 5 of my films are on Amazon Prime, so you can check those out.
Nice.
Just search my full name on Amazon Prime, it should pop up. And yeah, hope people like Prototype. Give it a chance. Don't watch just the first 5 minutes. Watch the whole thing. And then decide if you like it. But yeah, I think there's a lot of creative people in there. There's a lot of heart in the film. I think people, it was made at a difficult time for everybody. And so I think it's testament to that, you can produce things in difficult times. And hopefully people enjoy it.
Awesome. Well, Jack, thanks again for your time. Really appreciate it. And best of luck with everything.
Thank you, mate. Take care.
You too. I'd like to thank Jack Peter Mundy one more time for coming on the show to talk to me about his career, his life, and of course, Prototype, which is available now on VOD. Review coming later this week, but check it out if you're so inclined. And if you do check it out, leave them some good reviews because that really helps these indie creators grow and reach a wider audience. Remember to like and subscribe. We have a lot more interviews, a lot more new movie coverage, unboxings, comic reviews. We're coming into Comic-Con season where we're going to be gearing up to give you some con content. All cool things you're not going to want to miss out. Also, make sure you listen to So Is Your Podcast every single week, wherever you get your podcasts. So Is Your Podcast can also be found on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you get multiple monthly bonus shows, both video and audio. SoIsYourPodcast.com is your resource for reviews, recommendations, videos, merchandise, and more. We love hearing feedback, so drop us a note in the comments. Leave us something on social media. All the accounts can be found after the show and in the show notes. And as always, on a more personal note, a good friend and I have an ongoing comedy comic series. It's called Social Studies. It's a slice of life comic about kind of the high school experience, all the ridiculousness that goes along with it. We write it like a sitcom. We wrap it in the prism of the 90s cartoons that we grew up on and inspired us. Having a lot of fun with it so far. There's 9 issues available now in print at socialstudiescomic.com or on Comixology and Comixology Unlimited, we're very happy to say. Check it out. Thanks.